He is offering to support a pay raise for the Secretary of the Interior if he does what you want, a form of bribery. Could be, if you're a United States Senator voting on that pay raise. Fits with the rest of the ethics involved if the senator you happen to be is the notorious and previously law-breaking David Vitter of Louisiana. The watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington wants the senator to become the subject of a Senate ethics investigation for bribery. The group's chair joins me next. CREW, that's the acronym, is incensed over the letter that Republican Senator Vitter sent last month to the Secretary of the Department of the Interior, Ken Salazar. In it, Vitter threatened to vote against Salazar's pay raise unless the Department of the Interior starts issuing big oil companies exploratory oil drilling permits. This passive-aggressive shakedown read, in part, I was asked to support legislation in the Senate to grant you a nearly $20,000 salary increase. Given the completely unsatisfactory pace of your department's issuance of new deepwater exploratory permits in the Gulf, I cannot possibly give my assent. When the rate of permits issued for new deepwater exploratory wells reaches pre-moratorium levels, so 6 per month, I will end my efforts to block your salary increase. Secretary Salazar, in turn, wrote to the Senate leadership characterizing the senator's actions as, quote, attempted coercion. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid responded by saying Ken Salazar is an extremely well-qualified, hardworking cabinet secretary and deserves better than to be strong-armed while trying to do an important job for the American people. This violation of ethics, not the first for this senator from Louisiana. He's been tied to the Washington, D.C. escort service, for which the Senate nearly launched an ethics investigation. I don't mean literally tied. Well, maybe. The prostitute in that case was convicted in a federal court. Vitter never testified. A few weeks later, she committed suicide, and the Senate investigation never moved forward. So infuriated by this were Louisiana State House Democrats that they paid for and produced this advertisement in a bid to raise awareness of Vitter's ethical standards. The spot chronicled Vitter's penchant for prostitutes, including a reenactment voiced by an alleged prostitute from New Orleans.
He went in, took a shower, spoke very little to me at first. He did his thing. He wasn't there 15, 20 minutes at that. I was $300. 2 months into it, whenever I asked him, I said, so you're our local representative, huh? He was like, look, that's my job. Let's just leave that out of this. You know, this is personal.
That's my job. That's what I do. Perhaps even more infuriating is that heretofore any scandal that Vitter has been involved in, it has been brushed off largely. The Anthony Weiner story pales in comparison merely to Vitter's experience with Salazar, let alone his other experiences. As promised, joining me now, Melanie Sloan, Executive Director of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Ms. Sloan, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
If Salazar himself called that attempted coercion and Harry Reid called it strong-arming, how come there isn't a Senate investigation already?
Well, that's a really good question. It seems to me that Senator Vitter has evaded all accountability for all of his misdeeds, and that's why we forwarded this complaint to the Senate Ethics Committee. Frankly, this is just bribery, out and out. Senator Vitter offered the secretary something of value, basically a pay raise, in return trying to influence his official action, which would have been giving the deepwater drilling permits. So that's textbook bribery, and it seems to me that just because you're a senator is no excuse. He can be held accountable for bribery just as likely as, say, a defense contractor in the Duke Cunningham case who offered to pay for French furniture for Duke Cunningham.
$20,000 may not be much of a bribe to the Secretary of the Interior, but greater scandals have started for less, I think. I'm thinking of Teapot Dome. Senator Vitter, though, back to him, and we'll leave Harry Sinclair out of it for the time being. Senator Vitter has been on the CREW radar for a long time. How many formal complaints have you issued against him since 2007, and what for?
Well, this is our third ethics complaint against the senator. We filed the ethics complaint with the Senate Ethics Committee over the prostitution matter in the first place. Then we filed an ethics complaint against him in 2010 over his keeping on a staff person named Brent Fuhrer, who had beat up his girlfriend very badly and had been convicted for crimes related to that. And it had, in fact, also been convicted of a DUI in Louisiana. And Senator Vitter paid for him on official resources to go back to Louisiana to meet his court dates. And at the same time, this guy was working on women's issues while he'd been convicted of beating up his girlfriend. So there were several issues we thought the Senate Ethics Committee should look into regarding that, and they have not yet said anything. That was over a year ago we filed that complaint.
Why does, and excuse the expression, why would Vitter find himself or consider himself untouchable?
Well, I think Vitter considers himself untouchable because the prostitution scandal didn't seem to force him out of office like, say, the Anthony Weiner texting scandal forced Mr. Weiner out of office. And the really interesting thing about that is Mr. Weiner, as reprehensible as his conduct undoubtedly wasn't alleged to have engaged in any illegal conduct or violated any House rules. Senator Vitter, on the other hand, clearly violated existing statutes in Louisiana and D.C., prohibiting the solicitation of prostitution. And you'd think a U.S. Senator couldn't be committing crimes and remain in the U.S. Senate.
Well, to that point, if that's bribery, a bribery of the Secretary of the Interior, that's not just a Senate matter for an investigation. Is the Justice Department going to get involved in this in some way? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't have a lot of hope for the public integrity section of the Department of Justice. As you may recall, they recently took a pass on Senator John Ensign, and the Senate Ethics Committee would have voted to expel Mr. Ensign, and the special counsel there said that there was plenty of evidence for criminal charges against Mr. Ensign, but public integrity didn't take it up. So that's why we went back to the Senate Ethics Committee on this bribery matter. Again, it's textbook bribery. You simply can't offer something of value to a public official to induce them to take an official act, and that's clearly what Vitter was doing here by offering $20,000 raise in return for deep water drilling permits. So hopefully the Senate Ethics Committee will recognize this as a problem, and then they have the authority to refer it on to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. But of course, nothing stops DOJ from taking up the matter itself right now.
Melanie Sloan, the head of Crew, great thanks for your time tonight.